Welcome to Almost Here, Round the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies poised to transform our lives for better or worse are the focus of this podcast. Almost here means these technologies are now here and starting to be used, or just around the corner, from Bitcoin to artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with Future Tech Podcast. Today I have an interesting guest I talked to a while ago, Chris Kitze, creator of FlashCoin and MegaCoin. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Richard?
Good. Besides being a little raspy, appreciate you taking the time. So would you tell folks a bit about the coin, FlashCoin, and first a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, and I've done a lot of different kinds of companies, and I got interested in the crypto space. Michael Turpin introduced me to Bitcoin in, I think it was 2011, and I went and tried doing some mining. And after about a week of my computer, I had a Mac Pro, one of the old towers. You know, it sounded like an airplane was going to take off for about a week in my office, and I just finally turned it off because it was using about $20 worth of electricity to generate $2 worth of Bitcoins. And of course, those Bitcoins today would be worth how much? I don't know. I probably have to go and dig up that old machine and see what was mined. But anyway, I got into it. I started looking at it back then, and about 3 years ago, got serious about it, and we started a company called SafeCash. And what we've done is SafeCash is designed for banking type of product, and there are a lot of laws and regulations around that. The crypto world, the loyalty and the free coins and things like that, that actually is a lot more interesting. My background is in consumer marketing. I had companies that, one I took public called Zoom.com, is the original Zoom.com, not the payment company, the one before that. And I've had, 20 million people using my email services and signed up for home pages and various community type things, through Zoom.com. So I've got a pretty good background for mass consumer marketing. I've done some payment companies in the past, and that's why I got very interested in this. And Flash is the thing I'm going to focus on, because I think if you look at what we've done with that, we have optimized the Bitcoin code to basically centralize the processing, but we're going to do it through a delegated proof of work. So it's secure. We've had Jim Blasco, who's done a number of coins. He just finished up all that work, I believe, a couple days ago. And what's going to happen now is we did a pre-sale and a crowd sale up in Canada. No U.S. participants. There are just too many problems with U.S. laws and regulations. So it was all done in Canada. We had a company set up, and this company, it's basically everything we did was legal in Canada and for the rest of the world. And so what we've done is we made the blockchain so that it would be a very high performance and low cost blockchain. So one of the things that we noticed about Bitcoin was the amount of electricity that is consumed to basically process the transactions. And someone has to pay for it, and you're paying for it either through inflation or through transaction fees. And now it turns out that the chickens are coming home to roost, and Bitcoin, we love Bitcoin, but it's not going to be suitable for small transactions. People are now taking up the charge with Litecoin. I don't know if you've seen, Litecoin was about $4 maybe a couple months ago, and it's now over $20. And
crazy.
There are a number of reasons for that. Yeah, SegWit's coming out, and the developers are now moving in there and saying, well, we built all this stuff for Bitcoin, and it's actually very, very simple to make it work for Litecoin. So what I think you're going to end up with is a lot of these utilities that use Bitcoin and other cryptos are going to, it's going to take the form of like the coin payments wallet, where you basically can accept whichever crypto coin you want, as long as it's inside their wallet and inside their technology. If you're a merchant, that's a great deal. And, I'm involved with a company with another friend, not a company, actually, it's a project. And they're just collecting all the altcoins. And I just told them, I said, look, just stack this stuff up. And, some of these coins are going to be zeros in the future, but some are going to be quite valuable. This is what Flash is designed for. Flash is designed for high-speed processing. We've tested the blockchain up to 25,000 transactions a second. And, so it's under 2-second processing time. And the key is that we're also looking at putting in messaging into the blockchain, because the nodes of the blockchain are distributed, and you don't really have a centralized point of failure. Even though the processing is centralized, it can be moved in a few minutes. And, we'll get into what we're doing next. But there's a network of people who I think will want to support this kind of a coin, because it can be used for a lot of applications. Loyalty. We looked at doing advertising, but the ad business is basically dying right now. And Google and Facebook are fundamentally taking over the online advertising business. So it's very difficult for people who are not in that ecosystem to prosper. And so what we've looked at is more like an eBay type of a model, which is where we can put 40 bytes of data into a record, and it's a listing. And what can you list? Well, you could list just about anything you can put in 40 bytes. And so we'll probably work with some people to develop an application that will allow people to do OTC trading, to list their digital assets. So it's basically a Craigslist or eBay for digital things. And that, we think, could be a huge market.
All right, a couple questions on the mechanics of FlashCoin. You said that the proof of work next will be distributed. Can you go into the details of that a little bit, compared to what Bitcoin has right now?
No, the proof of work is centralized, but it's a delegated proof of work. So in other words, there will be nodes, and that's one of the things we'll talk about here today, which is we're about to offer, you could call them a master node or a governance node. And these are the nodes that actually get to vote for how to administer and govern the blockchain. One of the problems that Bitcoin has right now is a governance problem. They just can't get people to agree on what to do in the future. And what it's doing is it's creating opportunities for other coins like Litecoin, which may actually not be all that bad. I mean, I think that having all your eggs in one basket is not a good idea. And I think people are going to find different coins that have different use cases. But with our coin, we decided the first thing is the performance was really important, because for mass consumer markets, you don't want to have, it's $1.57 to send in the transaction. That's what my last Bitcoin transaction cost. Too expensive. If you're sending $20,000, it's great, because compared to sending a wire, it's a lot cheaper. But for consumers and for small payments, which is defined as under $50, there's no way it's going to work. And then the other issue is the processing speed. If I send you a coin, to be able to resend it, it takes an hour of waiting, and that's on a good day. So in order to speed that up, our engineers went and designed something that basically centralizes the proof of work, but the person who is responsible for doing that is delegated, and it's going to be controlled by this governance nodes that we're going to set up. So that's the difference, is that it's a different kind of a governance model. It's designed to be a low tax model. And if you think about the taxes that are on Bitcoin, there's a transaction processing tax. And, there are, if you think about it, some of the other coins like Dash and some of these other coins that have a transaction fee that gets redistributed to certain developers, there's a developer slush fund. And the model we really like there is Monero, which is where it's just a community, and the community decides they want to donate their coins to people who are going to do things. That seems to work pretty well. And so I think, if you look at the governance of these things, that's where, that's something that's going to be a little different about what we're doing with Flash, is that we want to have a community that controls it. So it's not controlled by any one person, but that decisions can be made very quickly, and that it involves the entire community. So people can vote with their coins, and they can also vote with these governing nodes, who basically function as representatives to collect the votes. And that's kind of like ARC in that sense. We admire that model a lot. The issue with something like ARC is that they don't really have, they're talking about doing something, but as far as a use case, but I don't see a lot of end user usage yet. And that's of course the thing is that, until someone actually uses the coin and does something useful with it, you really, you don't have a fully functional coin. Bitcoin, if you look at why it's so successful, it is the payment rails for all the altcoins. So if you want to buy ARC, if you want to buy Pivot, if you want to buy Dash, the first step is you got to go get some Bitcoin. So it's almost like, if you want to buy oil, you need US dollars. And it's that same kind of a thing that has just naturally evolved. No one sat in a smoke-filled room and said, you must take Bitcoin. It just turned out that that's the best choice, and that's what people adopted, and that's what people use. And it's working pretty darn well. So, you can't argue with that, but that's the main use case right now for Bitcoins is to get people to, onboard into the other crypto coins. And, each one of these coins is going to have its characteristics of the blockchain, the performance, the governance, whether it's a proof of work, is it proof of stake. There are a number of these things, and people are basically, of course, right now we're early, and people are testing, and we'll see which one works. But the thing that we liked was we looked at the proof of work, and centralizing that, you get huge improvements in performance. But the problem when you centralize the proof of work is that you then have the case where, one person can control it and they can do whatever they want to. And that's not good either. So you need to have a governance model in place that allows people to, find someone who is trustworthy. And again, at some point, there has to be some amount of trust, even with Bitcoin. So if I do a transaction with somebody, someone has to send their coin first. And you can set it up so it goes to an escrow, but then you're trusting the escrow. So, there's always a certain amount of trust with humans, and you really can't replace, that human trust, I think. I think that's the lesson that we've learned here. Now, you can reduce it, and you can take it down to the cryptography, and that is, you're trusting the math, which is a great thing because everyone can agree on that because it's math. So that's kind of the philosophy with Flash. But I think what you'll see is as a listing to be able to put 40 bytes into a transaction, which is a standard Bitcoin function, by the way, but the blockchains have not been optimized for this. And you think about, what are the use cases that people would want to do this? And I think a lot of people are looking at the exchanges and they're saying, wow, these exchanges are great. They're getting a lot better. We haven't had an MT Gox happen for a while. Bitfinex is a little shaky, some people think. But they've actually done very well. They've actually redeemed everything that they lost, and they did it very quickly, which shows you how profitable the exchanges are. So, I think that there's going to be a need for an OTC trade because people fundamentally want to be off the grid and peer-to-peer. That's a fundamental thing that people want. And how do you enable that? Well, you could build a website that just has a listing. I want to sell this for that. But now you're centralized. And, then you have to say, well, where's your website hosted? Where's it based? Where is it? And now all of a sudden you're in the land of you have to go get licenses and get regulated. And it's going to be quite painful and quite expensive. We looked at setting up an exchange, and the cost is it's about a $10 million ticket to do it right. And it's probably more than that now. That was a year ago. So it's probably $20 million now. But that's, you've got to find the right domicile. You've got to have the right kind of KYC, anti-money laundering, all those kind of policies to be legal if you're holding people's money. And that's the benefit of the OTC type exchange. And I think that's just one application. There are a lot of things you can do. You can put product registration information, but the idea is create a coin where you can put something into a blockchain where the blockchain itself is the data and the value is from the network and the data that's in the blockchain. And that's, I think, something that's new. I haven't really seen anybody else try that yet. And that's what we think is going to happen with Flash. We think there's going to be a lot of demand for this kind of an application.
Well, question about that. It seems like people have tried to keep as much data as possible off blockchain, using Merkle trees, etc., because the blockchain can't really support tons and tons and tons of data. So you want to go the other way? Am I correct in that? And how would you accomplish that? How would you avoid the blockchain from becoming bloated with, untold amounts of data?
Well, here's the issue. You've got first of all, yes, you're going to be putting more data into the blockchain, but you're putting in 40 bytes. That's all we're talking about here. Now, what can you do with 40 bytes? I'm old enough, I'm 58, so I'm used to things like dealing with engineers for assembly language, and you would be surprised at how much information you can stuff into 40 bytes. And I mean, back in the old days when storage was expensive, we used to optimize a lot of this stuff. So basically, you've got 40 bytes of data that's already being sent around on the blockchain. And that's what we're talking about. So we're not really talking about bloating up the blockchain. Now, if someone wants to put a bigger message in, you just start charging a lot of fees. And that's how people will make money off of this, is that they will support the blockchain, and what they're doing is they're supporting different nodes. And not everybody's going to need to run a node because we have a web wallet. So you don't need to run a node. We can already do that for people as well. If you want to run a QT wallet and you are by default running a node, if you're running an exchange, you're going to be running a node. If you want to create if you're a developer and you want to create a new service, you're going to run a node. So what's going to happen is, all this stuff, it is going to bloat up, but you start looking at the total amount of data that you're talking about, and, it's not really that much more than what you're already doing just for moving transactions around. So I think, how big is the blockchain going to get? It's going to be terabytes. Who's going to want to sync up a QT wallet? No one. People aren't going to do that unless you're a serious developer or an exchange. And, and if you're one of these governance nodes and you want to run a node, then, and that's one of the requirements of being in the governance pool is that you're helping to run a node, so things could switch over to you at any time. That itself, that's what people are going to get compensated for under our system. The difference is there's no inflation because the coins are all issued. They were all given away with the initial pre-sale, so they're fully distributed. There's no, developer pool where the developers have, given themselves a certain amount of coins. Everybody had to donate to get coins. There were no free coins. Now I'll take that back. There were 1 million of the coins were given away just for testing, and that's out of the 900 million total supply. So
yeah, tell me about the way you gave away coins. You said you didn't do it in the U.S. You did it in Canada. Why is that? What were some of the laws that made you not do it in the U.S.?
Well, it was actually pretty clear. We actually started a company. We work with a payment attorney in Canada. And, there's basically a golden window of time when you could set things up where the regulations in Canada they're going to start getting more and more tight, just like they are everywhere. And what we did is we set up a corporation in Canada. There are two companies. There's one company that's a money service business company, and that's the one that actually handled the administration of the blockchain initially, and that's now being moved away from that company. As soon as we finish our governance nodes, that's going to move away from that company, and that's going to happen probably in the next couple of weeks. Why Canada? Because Canada is a very friendly country. If you look at their stock market, they have what's called the venture exchange. They are used to doing things and trying a lot of things. And, the U.S. has just gotten sclerotic. It's gotten to the point where it's, the overhead and the regulations are just so onerous that it's almost impossible for people to even do business in the U.S. now. Now, people are hopeful Trump is going to do something. I don't know. We'll see. But the fact is that you've got the SEC that's looking at, how do they regulate this? And we just looked at it and said, you know what, just rope off everybody from the U.S. and that's it. If you have a company that's overseas, you can do it through your company. So that's actually, it turns out that's the loophole. You can't, as an American, you can't go get a bank account in another country. But if you have a company in that country, you can get a bank account for that company. And that's actually, there's still rules and regulations and reporting back in the U.S., but at least the bank will give you the account. So that's the concept that we've had to to deal with. And I think you'll see it's like most of these ICOs. You're seeing almost all of them being done offshore. Personally, I think that there's risk if you're taking in U.S. citizens because the SEC, they have enforcement powers and they can do all kinds of stuff. They can investigate. They can charge people with crimes. And, they're looking at it from the point of view of if you're a U.S. citizen, you're like their private property and they can keep you from getting a bank account in another country. That's what FATCA did. And you can still legally get a bank account in another country, but the banks just don't want to go through the hassle. They don't want to do all the reporting, and they don't want to be like the police and enforce U.S. tax laws on people who have a bank account in their country. So that's the long answer to your question, why not the U.S.? And that's the reason why.
So what stage is FlashCoin at now? Is it being traded on any exchanges? Where is it at?
Not yet. It's about to go on to at least one and hopefully 2 or 3 exchanges. We just finished the code for the wallet that the exchange will be using. We have to provide the source code to the exchange, and then we have to get set for some market making and to get people who are interested in the coin to who want to participate in it to be able to participate. But it looks like Bittrex will be the first exchange. And we initially tried doing a crowd sale there. And what ended up happening is we decided to pull it off of that because, we were concerned about anybody being from the U.S. Once the coins are out there, it's just property. And so it doesn't really have anything to do with the SEC. And, and this is Bittrex is a licensed exchange. And I think what's going to happen is that once it's out on that exchange, I think you'll see a lot of exciting things start to happen with the developers. So, people obviously they like to develop for something where they can see, what they can use the coin for. And one of the main use cases for a coin is to be able to trade it for something else. And that's pretty much of a requirement for crypto coin these days.
You mean trade it for something else, for another coin, or
for another coin, for Bitcoins, for eventually for dollars if the exchange sets up to do that.
You said one of the biggest use case for Bitcoin was being able to buy altcoins. Coinbase now you can buy Bitcoin, Ethereum. They just added Litecoin. Do you think that's going to make any difference in how Bitcoin's used, or do you think other exchanges or places allow you to use fiat to buy altcoins? It's going to hurt or help or change Bitcoin?
Well, here's the thing. Most of the exchanges, you can do, it's a lot easier to do a person-to-person OTC trade with Bitcoin because you don't have to be there in person. If I'm selling you Bitcoins for dollars, and let's say I have a half a Bitcoin and you want to meet me at Starbucks and buy my half a Bitcoin for $700 or $800, right? You can do that. But for Bitcoin, having the ability to trade into all these other coin pairs, and if you look at all the exchanges around the world, they all pretty much function the same way. The maximum number of pairs for trading is with Bitcoin, hands down. Go look at Polonia. You can do ETH. You've got maybe, 20 coin pairs there. You look at Bitcoin and there's hundreds of coin pairs. You go to Liquid. You go to Yobit. You go to all these other exchanges, and the number of coin pairs that work with Bitcoin is big. So that's the thing that's the driver, and that is, in my opinion, the killer app for Bitcoin. Really what it is. Now, I think there's an opportunity for a product based on either fiat, which, Tether tried doing, but, the issue of Tether is, of course, it's not even an omnibus bank account. It's a bank account, which means that the bank has taken the money and gone and, 90% of it's not even in the bank anymore. That's problem number one. The other thing is, I think you're going to see an opportunity for an asset-backed gold or metal-backed crypto coin that people can use as a safe haven for when the cryptos are going down in value. because that's one of the issues is, you trade out to U.S. dollars, but maybe you don't want to be in U.S. dollars, and maybe you want to be in something else, and the something else is, if it's gold and it's based on this kind of a blockchain, which has the best of both worlds, which is a centralized and decentralized approach, you now have another alternative. But look at how long it took Bitcoin to get to the point where it had thousands of coin pairs. It took 6 or 8 years. I mean, the first exchanges, they showed how to do it, and quite frankly, not every exchange wants to list thousands and thousands of coins. And you're going to find there are going to be some exchanges that are focused on the small coins that are, not heavily traded. If you want to buy a Le Pen coin, if you think she's going to win the election, just like the Trump coin, if you think she's going to win the election, where can you buy it? There's 2 exchanges. There's Cryptopia in New Zealand and Yobit. There may be a couple of others now, but those are the 2 that I'm aware of. And that's it. And it's very thinly traded. I mean, it may trade, 3 Bitcoins a day, but if she wins, which who knows, maybe she will. If she wins, it may moon. So that's.
Do you have any insight? Yeah, do you have any insight into how the exchanges choose to allow BTC altcoin pairs, and when they keep them, when they get rid of them? Any inside baseball there?
Well, I think the first thing is the ones that are in the U.S., I think if there's any potential problem where the coin could be deemed a security, they'll dump the coin. And you've seen some of the action happening with Poloniex lately, where they've delisted a number of coins. Some good coins, too, by the way. And coins with decent trading volume, and they've delisted them. And they haven't said why, but that's my take on it, is that there are some potential regulatory flags with those kind of coins. And the problem in the U.S., if you're a U.S.-based exchange, the SEC has what's called, and this is a, pretty much settled law, went to the Supreme Court. It's called the Howey test, and it's named for a famous Supreme Court decision, which basically defines how they characterize something as a security. How do you define something as being a security? And, one of the things is expectation of future profit. And I mean, well, what doesn't have that? So, right. I mean, it's like, well, why would people buy stuff? Well, you buy it to consume it, to use it. And that's one of the reasons why, if you look at what we're doing with Flash, that's why we set it up that way. Now, what makes people want to list a coin pair? First of all, if they think that there's something behind it and a decent use case, they'll put it up. Now, remember, in a rising tide, even dead fish float higher. That's the point that we're at right now, right?
That's funny.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Right now, this is actually, I've already lived through this before. It was called the .com boom. And that's what's going on right now. What you're seeing is a replay of the .com boom times 1,000. And You've got all these coins. You've got literally, because to get listed, I mean, to take a company public is a lot of work. It's expensive. It takes a lot of time. You have to have a lot of lawyers. You have to get banks to help you do it. I mean, there's no legal requirement to use a bank, but they've made it to the point where you would be crazy if you tried doing it on your own. And the reason is because you need a market maker, and you need a sponsor. That's basically what it comes down to. And you're starting to see the same thing emerge with the ICO market right now. But it's still possible for some person with an idea in their bedroom to build something that's really cool, that captivates people, that excites people, and that is useful. And when you have those kind of things come together, that to me is what makes this so exciting. And it's fun. I mean, where else can you have something where someone who's 17, 18, they could be 14. We don't care about how old they are. We just care about how good the code is, and we care about what the application is and what problem it solves. And that's it. But what's happening is you're starting to see the big money arrive. Okay. And that's what's happened with the market. There's a melt up just today. It's another, Litecoin's up another 20%. Bitcoin's up another 10%. And, what I said at the beginning of the year, I said, this is when the overall market cap was, I think it was around 25 billion, maybe 20 billion. I said, by the end of the year, the overall altcoin market cap will be $100 billion. And next year, by the end of 2018, it'll be $500 billion. It'll be 5 times bigger, $500 billion. And what is driving?
This is exactly what I was going to ask you. Go ahead. I wanted some future insights on what you think is going to happen. So go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So what's driving that? It's an asset class that, first of all, is having huge returns, and everybody wants in on the action. It's as simple as that. And it's, to some extent, some people might call it a mania, right? Like tulip mania. But there's more than tulips here. There's actually something that's useful. And, if you look back to the .com days, everyone says, well, pets.com went bankrupt. Yeah, they did. They did go bankrupt. But Amazon.com did not go bankrupt. And I remember Henry Blodgett, who was an analyst that I know personally, he said Amazon's going to be worth $400 a share. And literally a week later, it was worth $400 a share. So what's happened, and now if you, I don't even know what the adjusted stock price is now, it's probably a couple $1,000s a share. So it's like anything. Some of these things are going to do really, really, really well, and others are going to go broke. And that's the way it is. So the key is if you can find something, an application, a niche that you can carve out a living, that you can build a community, and you can have people who come together for common benefit, and everybody wins. There's nothing wrong with that.
Tell me what you think specifically is going to happen with Bitcoin throughout the rest of 2017 and perhaps 2018. And I know these are guesses.
Well, I said at the beginning of the year, I said Bitcoin's $2,000 this year, and it looks like it's going to, at the rate things are going, it might be that by next week. So, predictions, as Mark Twain said, predictions are difficult, especially those involving the future. And I think what, Bitcoin itself, why is it worth what it's worth? People ask me this question all the time. It's not backed with anything. And I'm like, well, actually, that's not true. It is backed. It's backed with technology. It's backed with millions of transactions that have run through the system successfully. It's backed with the hashing power and all of the, it's basically a proxy for electricity. So it has an inherent value. And the biggest value of Bitcoin is the certainty of supply. If you notice, Bitcoin never did an ICO. There was no ICO for Bitcoin. It just went out and did its thing, and it was successful, and people worked on it, and they invested their time. They did the mining. They built the thing out, and it worked. Now, people are trying to, jumpstart things and make them so that they will go faster, and that's one of the reasons why they're trying to do these ICOs and whatnot. But Bitcoin never had that baggage. So, what's in the future for Bitcoin? I mean, what's the value of Bitcoin? A good friend of mine says he thinks it's $1 million per coin. Now, if that's the case, then the dollar's probably not worth very much, but that could happen. That's one scenario. I think what's more likely is, $25,000 Bitcoins. And the hard part about the Bitcoins is just hanging on to them, because you see so many things to go do and spend them on. Like, when Litecoin was $4, I said, okay, I'll take some of my Bitcoins and go and buy Litecoin. And I'm actually very, very happy because the altcoins have outperformed Bitcoin. But at the same time, you never want to not have Bitcoin if you're in this space. Right. So that's because it's this payment rail for all the crypto coins. And it's useful for your ICOs. It's useful for all these different things. Now, Ethereum's starting to catch on to that. I bought some Ethereum a while ago. I've been very happy with that, of course. But we used a lot of that, probably half of it, for doing ICOs, because that's how you had to pay. It was Ethereum-based ICOs, so we paid with Ethereum. So it's, and that's very, very interesting. But it's, as far as Bitcoin goes, they'll figure out this fork, the Bitcoin Unlimited thing. They'll figure that out. I think once SegWit gets running on Litecoin and it's proven, I think that we'll see a change in opinion on the Bitcoin community towards that. And they just basically have to have consensus and figure it out. But in the meantime, I mean, it still works. It's being processed. You've got the processing fees are, I think, high. But, think about what the work that's being done. It's actually, it's still a bargain. Bitcoin is still a bargain. Because as I always said, it's too valuable to use as money. It really is. And what I mean by that is, why would you spend your Bitcoin? You've got something that is a very, very useful public ledger, and it does all of these amazing things. The way it's secured, the security, all these different things. It's
right.
Now, and what can you do with a coin? Well, you've got 100 million Satoshis. So you don't really have one Bitcoin. You have 100 million Bitcoins in a fashion. I mean, you can spend the minimum transactions probably around 5,500 Satoshis. But the fact is that, it's divisible, and you're not really, everyone says, well, I can't afford a Bitcoin. And I'm like, why do you need to own one whole? Yeah, why do we need to own a whole Bitcoin? Just buy a tenth of a Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah. People don't understand that. They think about it like it's a dollar bill, and they don't understand that you can get nickels, dimes, and quarters, pennies.
All right. Last question for you. So back to FlashCoin. What's on the roadmap for this year for FlashCoin?
So for this year for FlashCoin, the first thing is we need to get listed on a couple of exchanges, and we are in the process of doing the governing node, if you will. It's like a master node, but it's not really a true master node. Fail. And what that's going to do is that's going to get us that's going to get the community going on building out this listing model and, getting a number of nodes. I mean, it's community building 101, right? You need to get people using it. To give you an example, I just talked to somebody who is a software developer for casinos, and he was looking for a loyalty product. And I said, you could go and build your own blockchain, but why not just use Flash? Because it's going to be cheap. It's going to process quickly. You can go buy it and afford to give it away to people. It may appreciate in value. We can't promise that. We don't know the future. But, it's very attractive for a software developer because they don't have to run a blockchain. They don't have to go through the process of getting it listed on an exchange. I mean, all these things take time and money. And people who are software developers who are not blockchain developers don't know how to do all this stuff. And quite frankly, they should be focused on building their applications. So that's our roadmap for this year is to get developers like this using Flash. That's really what it is. And to create usage. And people will surprise us. I mean, the code's out there. It's open source. They can, there's an API. They don't have to run a node if they don't want to. And it's a very nice development platform for someone who's a developer who doesn't want to build a blockchain. And I think there are a lot of developers out there like that. Now, some people will say, well, you can use Ethereum, but, Ethereum, it's going to be interesting to see. That is not purely a settlement system. Bitcoin and the variants of Bitcoin are settlement systems. Now, what does that mean? Well, what Ethereum decided to do was to put the smart contract right in the blockchain. Now, that has advantages and disadvantages. The big disadvantage is, of course, that you are a Turing complete system. And for a settlement system like Bitcoin, which is not Turing complete, because Bitcoin does not have recursion. Now, recursion is what leads to artificial intelligence. And the problem with that is that as soon as you start allowing recursion, you have a situation where people don't even understand the implications of what contract means. And this is the DAO, right? They wrote a contract and someone found a corner case and took advantage of it, followed all the rules and took advantage of it. Personally, I think morally it's wrong to take things from other people, but that's what this person decided to do. And as far as I could tell, it's not illegal what this person did. It's perfectly legal. So that I think is going to be one of your big issues is, are you going to be focused on the smart contract or being a settlement system? And they're both different use cases. So they will both probably succeed. And that's why you're seeing Ethereum. I mean, I have people say, oh, go short Ethereum. And I'm like, I'm not going to short Ethereum. Remember, in a rising tide, the dead fish float higher. Even if you think Ethereum is a dead fish, it's going to go up. So that's what's happening now. And there are a lot of smart people working on Ethereum too. I don't want to take anything away from what they've done. They've built something that's pretty amazing. And, I don't know what the market cap is this morning, $7-8 billion. Will it catch Bitcoin? I don't know. Depends on what Bitcoin does. It depends on the community. And, will Litecoin catch Ethereum? I don't know. But they're all going to go up because it's a huge market that everybody's chasing. And these things all have utility.
Okay. Well, Chris, you've got great insights into many things. We could talk for quite a long time, but, we're out of time right now. So last thing is, for listeners, how can we let them know more about FlashCoin and what's coming? Do you have a Slack, or what's the best way to find out?
Well, there's, Bitcoin Talk. That's one place where we have a message board over there. They can go to the flashcoin.io website, and that's going to be updated in the next couple days. But mainly, the Bitcoin Talk forum is the main place. That's where the real news and information comes out. And then there are people can contact me directly on Unseen, on Skype. Skype, it's Kitze, C-K-I-T-Z-E. On Unseen, it's Chris. That's unseen.is. And that's a private and secure communication system we actually developed with another company. So that actually could be another use case for Flash, which is a signaling plane, which allows people to put their obfuscated IP address so that only their friends can find out where they are, and then peer-to-peer communicate with them. But that's a down the road application, which I think is kind of interesting. But that's as a signaling plane for this kind of information, that is something that the blockchain could be very useful for.
Well, since you brought it up, can we just talk about that potential project very briefly, obfuscating IPs and secure communication?
Yes. One of the issues with communications is signaling, and we've had a company called Unseen, which is based in Iceland. It's about 5 years old, and one of the things we've learned about is you can do true peer-to-peer networks, but the problem is the signaling plane. How do you let someone know? How do I let somebody know where my IP address is without broadcasting it to the entire world? And there are ways to put this into blockchain where I can have something, a coin that goes in there and it expires in some time period. And it's actually a very interesting economic model because it's like a pay phone call. The old saying, drop a dime and go call somebody. You could send some Flash coins in, and that gets your message put into the blockchain. And anyone who can read the blockchain, who has a connection with you, who has a hash and can read your and decode your IP address, can then connect with you. That's the idea. So it's the signaling plane is actually one of the main problems of communication. And to be able to put that into a blockchain, I know people have talked about it. I haven't seen anybody do anything specific there. We've got about 200,000 users of Unseen right now, and I know the Unseen users would be very, very interested in this. I know they'd be very, very interested in this. And it's a lot of the software work's already been done, but we would have to clean up the signaling plane, and that is something that would have to be developed. So, if there are developers out there who would be interested in working on that, we'd love to hear from you. I think what you could do is one of the things that's nice about crypto is you build an application, you can build in a way to get paid. So every time someone uses it, they send a coin. It's a split payment. And you send a coin. If I send 10 Flash coins to do my listing, maybe 3 coins go to the developer. There are a lot of things like that you can do. So I think that's very exciting from a software developer point of view. Very exciting because it's a way now to directly get paid. And I have a lot of developers in places like India who are keenly interested in all this stuff.
Okay.
Because to set this up and get paid is a wonderful thing. And it goes cross-border. It goes right into their wallet. And then they can just go and do an exchange for Bitcoins and go and do whatever they want to with Bitcoins.
All right. Well, Chris, very good. We're out of time. But, I appreciate you taking the time and, giving all this knowledge. So thanks. And hopefully people will connect with you after hearing the podcast.
You bet. Thanks, Richard, and good luck to you and all your listeners.
Okay, take care, sir.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Almost Here, Around the Corner Future Technology podcast with Richard Jacobs. Subscribe to this podcast, post a review to discover more future technologies that are poised to transform our lives for better or worse, such as Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, 3D printing, blockchain, virtual reality, and more.